Hi, I'm North. This is my channel, North and his books, and this is week 15 of my never-ending series on my journey to fluency in 10 languages. In the last week, I have been doing a lot of Chinese in particular, and I also made a very short video about this that I posted recently. Essentially, I have been looking at characters in Chinese that are a bit less common. For example, characters that I only know in one particular context, in one word or in one expression, and I've been searching those characters up and looking for similar or other words and expressions that use those characters and adding them in to my deck, and also starting very slowly starting the process of learning them. Now, because there are thousands of characters that an educated Chinese would know, if you want to say you're fluent in Mandarin Chinese, you should know at least 3,000 characters, possibly a decent amount more, depending on what your definition of fluent is. And I think before I started this in the last 8-9 days, I had a total of some 2,700, 2,600 different characters across all the words that I had at least started to learn. But many of these characters I didn't really know very well. And many of these characters also show up in such different contexts that you then go, okay, but wait, I remember this character, but what the heck does it mean in this context? So I have to go through the process. And what I found is that some rare characters are only used in one context, which makes it almost harder to learn them because you're only going to see them once. But at the very least, it means they're less important. Whereas other characters have like 20 different situations they can be used in, especially a lot of idioms and so on. And for that, I have been simply adding word after word after word into my deck of flashcards, and that takes a lot of work. I have been doing so I haven't been starting to learn those words, but I have been adding around 100 and something words, so twice that many cards, 2 cards per word or 2 cards per expression each day, which takes a bit of time. But I start off in the morning, and then I sort of get it out of the way, and then I do whatever else I do with my life during the rest of the day, which isn't related to languages. But it takes a lot of time because there's just so many words, and there's so many things to memorize in Chinese that, for example, learning French or Italian or Dutch, that you don't have to worry about. And I can understand, obviously, why it takes so much longer to get fluent at Chinese. So at the current rate that I'm going at, not that I will keep this up every day forever, obviously, I expect that it will, even if I'm really pushing myself and just learning Chinese and sort of just maintaining the other languages, not learning new vocabulary in other languages, it would take me a very long time. I can't, certainly well over a year, even though I don't want to brag, but I am pretty good at memorization. It will take me 2-3 years of everyday heavy learning and memorization in order to have a big enough body of characters and words and expressions and so on that I could open a Chinese book that is not meant for learners and actually understand it with the occasional, obviously, word or character that I'm not quite sure about. So in any case, that's what I've been doing for the past week. I expect I'll continue that for a bit longer. I've also started the search for a Mandarin teacher. Obviously, in the beginning, I want to have a teacher that can really help me learn to pronounce everything as well as guide me through that beginner stage up to a certain point. The issue is also that I don't want to spend a huge amount of money. And you can obviously find very great teachers that demand a very high hourly rate. So I was looking on italki, and I saw some prices. I'm also looking at Conversation Exchange in the city where I live. Of course, the issue with that is that you only get half the bang for your buck, or bang for your time, I should say, since time is also very worthwhile. Since half the time I'd have to be trading it for English or whatever they want to learn. So I think I'll go with a tutor, but it's a hard process. And with some languages, in fact, I remember when I was looking online for a Dutch tutor on italki, which is the biggest website for these sorts of things, I found it was hard to get someone without going into the 20 plus Canadian, I'm in Canada, 20 plus Canadian dollars per hour. And in the end, the two tutors that I had used for Dutch, one was living in Thailand, which is why he was willing to accept a lower hourly rate. And another one was really bored during the pandemic. So he was willing to, he enjoyed, I could tell to a certain extent he did, it was clearly work, but to a certain extent he might have enjoyed actually talking to people and having stuff to do for a while. So there is where I'm at with Chinese. The only thing else I can say really is that I've found that despite not practicing my Swedish actively, pretty much barely at all, I seem to be continuing to get better and better at understanding spoken Swedish. In fact, it was interesting. I even saw there was a Vice, the news channel, a YouTube video posted about refugee seekers and so on, and it was about Denmark, where they don't speak Swedish. They speak Danish, obviously, but they had a couple of parts where people were speaking in Danish, and it was interesting that I was able to understand a wee bit of it, especially since I knew the context. I knew what they were yelling into the megaphone about, even though the joke is that Danish is hard to understand relatively to, say, Norwegian if you're coming from Swedish as a basis. In any case, it didn't seem all that difficult, and in fact, the YouTube channels to which I am subscribed, which include a couple of political parties, so they speak very clearly, they speak about this is what we want to do for Sweden, yada, yada, yada. I found that it's not that hard to sort of keep catching on. So despite the fact that I have definitely spent less time on Swedish than any other language of all the ones that I want to speak, it's incredible to see the night and day difference, for example, between that and Russian, where I have spent quite a bit more effort, and yet I still have an incredible difficulty understanding a lot of things. That's about it for this week. I'm going to be filming a few very simple videos talking about what this channel was supposed to be about in the beginning, which was, in theory, books. And I'm going to be speaking in a few other languages besides English, also just to force myself to practice those languages. For example, I'm going to be speaking in Dutch for the first time in however long, and we're going to see how that goes, and we'll see if I can force myself to be more honest with myself about where or how easy it is for a language to regress when you stop actively studying it. So it's been since February that I've stopped studying Dutch, and I haven't spoken at all since February with that fine gentleman who was so bored during his lockdown. So I guess I'll have to see for myself where I'm at, because it's one thing to keep listening, it's another thing to actually speak and hear myself unable to find the words, or hear myself make mistake after mistake after mistake. That's all for this week. Tune in for more videos on language learning. Thank you.